Welcome to our weekly Badass Business Bites. If we've never met, my name is Jessica, and I am an e-commerce and email marketing strategist for scrappy entrepreneurs and host of the e-commerce badassery podcast. I know it kind of looks like I'm naked on video, but I swear I have a shirt on. So I'm not sure if you listened to the podcast this week, but if you did, please let me know in the comments. Also, I am going live with StreamYard, so you do have to give permission for me to see your name when you post a comment. The link to do that should be in the description of this video. So on this week's podcast, I talked about email segments for e-com, right? Like these 4 must-have segments. I know that segmentation is a total buzzword, right? And it is important and it does do really great things, but I know that it can also be super overwhelming. You kind of don't know where to start. You get FOMO and you feel like you need to be creating all these segments, but maybe you have a small list, like less than 5,000 people, and you create these segments and you have like 4 people in them and you just don't know what to do. So I really wanted to focus on creating segments based on where customers are in their journey with you. I really need to, like, if you're joining late, I have a shirt on, I swear. Hey, Danae. Hi, Facebook user. So, I want you to focus on segmenting them based on where they're at in their journey with you. I am going to review a little bit about what I talked in the podcast because I am live in 3 places right now, and maybe not everybody listened to it. I'm going to go ahead and share the documentation from Klaviyo, which, as you know, is my favorite email marketing platform. And, they didn't make this up. I learned this on a different email platform that had these segments actually built in, but I didn't really have visibility into what made people qualify. And then I found this documentation from Klaviyo. And when you read it, if you didn't listen to the podcast or when you first go and look at it, and once you kind of wrap your head around it, it's gonna all make sense, I promise you. So like I said, I'm going to run through these quickly. If you didn't listen to the podcast episode, I recommend that you do go do that. But I really wanted to take today to answer your questions, dig a little bit deeper, brainstorm with you if you're like not 100% sure how you should make this work for your business. Because 2 of the things that you need to know is the frequency with which people buy from you, and kind of like what their lifetime value is, and like that kind of thing. Every product is going to be a little bit different. If you are a consumable product, that person is going to buy with you a lot more frequently than if you are a mattress. I always use mattress as the example because it's a really good extreme, right? People are only buying mattresses once every couple of years, unless they need a new one for a different room or something like that. But it's just not something that we're buying regularly. So when you're thinking about that customer journey, it's going to be different for every single business. And then also when it comes to these emails or these email segments, it also depends on how often you send emails, because, you may be trying to identify a group of unengaged people, but if you only send 1 email a month, then you need that time frame to be longer, right? Because maybe they've only received 6 emails from you in the last 6 months. So that if you haven't listened to the episode yet, that may make no sense to you, but I promise it will. So for those of you who are here, did you watch the podcast episode? Did you have questions about how to apply this to your business, or anything else in terms of segmentation and emails that you kind of wanted me to cover today? I really want to make these lives, not just a regurgitation of what I covered on the podcast, but to really get a little bit more one-on-one time with you and help you figure this shit out for your business. So please go ahead and drop that in the comments. Also, if you are watching the replay, feel free to drop your questions in and I will come back and answer them. This will live on, in the Facebook group. I think I'm also on the Facebook page, and I'm actually live on YouTube too. So that's weird. I've never done that before. So welcome if you're watching me on YouTube. Great to see you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I'm just going to get my screens over here situated. Bum, bum, bum. So what I talked about in the podcast too was, 4 of the main segments that I use that I have seen the best results with, right? So if you are not familiar with my background, before I started eCommerce Badassery, I was running a 7-figure e-commerce business in my day job. For the first 3 years of that business, I was the only employee. So I literally did everything. That's why I always, when I'm talking to e-commerce entrepreneurs, I'm like, look, it wasn't my business, but it sure as hell felt like it was, because it was just me and like a part-time person to pack and ship orders. So I know how it feels to try and wear all the hats, do all the things, and you feel like you're never doing anything really well. So I definitely identify with that. Eventually, what happened though was, we had someone else, it was like a new CFO came in, and he told the VP of retail, who was my immediate boss, was like, look, if you want to grow this, she can't be the only employee. That was like the greatest day. So we started hiring new people, and I got to really lean into email, which is why, I love it so much, because it was such an important channel for us at that business. And so I've done all of this, like the things that I talk about and that I recommend, it's because I've done them. And it takes time, yes, but the payoff is worth it. I promise. Okay. So when I was doing that though, I still had a bunch of other crap I was doing. I'm actually still working with them on a project that we started like a year ago. And I've been out of there. I've been full-time in this business for 10 months already. Holy crap, time flies so quickly. Finally getting to see that come to fruition. But I didn't have a ton of time to do email still. But I knew that with these segments that I'm talking about, and the ones I cover in the podcast, that's why I broke it down to those 4, because I tried a lot of them, and it was those 4 that really made the most money and revenue. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, you can still do this. Just focus on those, that's going to get you the best bang for your buck. Let's see. Facebook user says, I am super used to sending emails to everyone. When we are crafting the emails and designing them, should we think about who we're emailing first? Sorry, probably an obvious answer, but do you have any insight onto how to set the emails up? Yes, let's talk about that. I love this. So in the podcast episode, what I tell you is when you are thinking about these life cycle segments, right? I don't want you to feel like you have to create content for every single one of these groups every time you send an email. Now, here's the thing. If you are a big corporate company and you have a huge marketing team, which I got to tell you, even if you're a big corporate company, doesn't mean you have a big email marketing team. That's fine, right? Because you have a lot of people working on it. You can manage that. But if you are a one-woman, man, they show, you know what I'm saying? If you're a one-person show, if you don't have help, just do this on a quarterly basis, right? Continue to send your emails to your entire list, or, if you have a natural break in your product, like if you sell, adult and children's clothing, for instance, right? Separate those people maybe. But otherwise, just send to everyone as you were doing, and then bring these segments in on a quarterly basis. Because if you try and create separate content for these 4 groups of people every single week, you are going to drive yourself crazy, and you're not going to get the payoff from it, right? The amount of time, energy, and effort you put in, you're not going to see the return. But sitting down every once in a while and creating content for them, that will work. Now, also, when it comes to this, here's the thing I want you to, are you Facebook user? Sorry, I don't know your name. You can give StreamYard access. Are you using Klaviyo? Because if you are, and this is for anyone, obviously, and I know there's a few people on OmniSend. They don't have dynamic content for campaigns yet, but I know it's coming because I am technically a partner with OmniSend as well. And they did tell me this, but I don't have a time frame on it. But here's the thing is, ow, I hit my finger on the desk. You can send one email, right, to a large group of people, but use dynamic content in that same email to show different content to different people. Okay, are you familiar with dynamic content? If not, I will find the documentation that explains this and I'll drop it in the comments here. This is legit my favorite feature of Klaviyo and one of the reasons why I love it so much, because you can personalize the content so much more, right, to your people without you having to create 12 different emails. So let me talk a little bit about what you can do with that. Is those dynamic blocks, and you can do it with any block. It can be text, it can be photo, it can be product, it can be even just like the horizontal spacer. Any of these things can be conditionally shown, okay? Facebook, you're not familiar, that's awesome. We have to segment wholesale and retail customers. Yes, that's a natural break, right, where you want to send them different content. But if you have different groups within the wholesale or different groups within the retail, you can use dynamic content to make this easier. So essentially, all the conditions that you would put on these dynamic blocks are going to be based on a profile property. So Klaviyo adds some of their own profile properties, right? But you can add them too. You can do this in flows. You can have people fill out a manage preferences form to collect this, which I do recommend you start doing. If you haven't already heard, when iOS 15 comes out, we're going to start losing things like open rates and IP addresses, so you're not going to know where your people are at. Ultimately, we want to always focus, with all of these privacy changes coming, we want to focus as collecting as much first-party data as we possibly can, because that is the data we know we will always be able to use. And the more data you have, then the more, conditions and things that you can create for those dynamic blocks. So like I said, I'm going to throw the documentation to that in the comments of this. So if you're watching, make sure you check after this is over so you can get your hands on that and start playing around with that. So let's talk about these segments a little bit. The four that I talked about are your high rollers and VIPs, right? Those are your best customers. They buy often and they spend a lot of money. Those are our favorite people. Then we have the next level, which is our brand enthusiasts. These people are loyal as well. They shop often, right? But they don't spend as much as those VIPs or high rollers. I usually, if you're pressed for time, I will group these people together. So instead of creating like two separate emails, I'll just create one and send it to both of those groups. And what's really cool about these groups is they are so, in love with you and invested with you, you don't have to give them discounts. They don't need discounts to buy. So don't give them to them, right? Why eat into your margin if you don't have to? So there's a couple of ways that you can kind of work with this group. And one, like I said, you can sit down quarterly and create content just for them. Maybe it's just a, hey, bring in a little joy to your inbox, saying things, we appreciate you. Here's what's new. Here's what maybe, you haven't seen yet. You can do product recommendations. So Klaviyo also has an algorithm for product recommendations, which takes all the data that it knows about your customers and will show them different products based on what they know about them. These product recommendations will also never show them a product they already purchased. So if you are a clothing boutique, that's great. If you are a one product store, not so great, or a small assortment, right? Or maybe you focus more on different colors and people buy multiples of things. So then those product recommendations aren't good because it'll never show them that product. But if you have a wider assortment, this is a great tool. Makes it so easy to send an email. Seriously, all you have to do is come up with a fun subject line, throw in the product recommendations, and you have an email that you barely had to do any work for. So on those, your goal is to keep them as customers and just have them keep shopping. This group is another great group to target with early access to new arrivals or whatever fun things you have. Maybe you do special lives for your VIPs is something you can try. Think about what makes sense for your business. If you are a boutique, what could be really cool is maybe you offer your VIPs like a 15-minute styling session, right? Where you just like get on a call with them, show them some stuff, help them find some things. How cool would that be? You're really deepening that relationship. They're going to trust you so much more, and it's just going to make them more and more loyal. And of course, you could always put a limit at this, the first 15 people, the first 10 people, something like that. So just some different ways that you can engage with those people to just keep them invested in you. The other two groups that I talked about are your waiting for wows and you're nearly there. So these are people who are engaging with your emails, but they've never ever bought from you before. And I love focusing on these groups because, as you know, getting the first purchase on your store is the hardest one. But once you get that first one, everyone after that gets easier and easier. So if you can focus on converting that first-time buyer and really understanding what makes them convert, right? It's going to be so much easier to continue to convert those people. So having that group that they signed up for your emails, they open your emails, they click your emails all the time, but they still haven't purchased from you. Like, test out different messaging to figure out what gets them to finally buy. And what's cool about this is once you kind of narrow that down and you figure that out, then you can use that in all of your other marketing channels. I had a guest on the podcast a long time ago. His name is Rishi Rawat. Let me find, I don't remember what episode number it is, but I'll put it in the comments if you're newer to eCommerce Badassery and you haven't heard that yet. And what he talked about was, one, refining your story. Like as a business owner, you're always refining your story. But he also talks about the importance of converting those first-time buyers and really understanding why they buy. So this is a really great exercise to help you do that. Now, in the documentation from Klaviyo, they're going to tell you that the waiting for wow, so you've got two groups, nearly there, waiting for wow. Nearly there, much more engaged with you, like they open every email, click every email, but they haven't bought. The waiting for wows, like they engage, but not quite as often. And they do say that the waiting for wows may need a discount to purchase. But I think you can test out some stuff first in terms of your messaging, right? Figuring out why they buy your product. Is it because it's solving a real problem? Does it make them feel good? Is it a status symbol? Is it about self-care? Like, test out some different content. And you can do this with just the regular A/B testing feature in Klaviyo and see which one gets more conversions. And because you're going to do this on a quarterly basis, or you could do it more often if you want, then you can just continue to test, and really dial that in. All right, so I feel like I've been for the last 18 minutes and 49 seconds. I don't see any questions coming through, but please, if you do have questions, go ahead and pop them in the comments. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Did you feel, and so for those of you who listened, or even those of you who are just listening to this now, in terms of segmentation and the type of content, does this feel easier than what you kind of thought segmentation had to be? Because I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I need to segment based on, what they bought and get really specific and then only show them items that make sense with the previous purchases that they made. And you're just like, it feels like such a rabbit hole that you'll just spend all your time trying to do that. And like I said, the bigger you get, that can be really valuable and powerful. And I think, it pays off to maybe sprinkle that in once in a while. But to do that on a regular basis would just be overwhelming. And I'll give you an example. Adriana says, I'm not there yet. I've got like 50 people on my list. I feel you, girl. You don't have to segment yet. But what's cool is too, you know, when you set up a dynamic segment, people will just start qualifying. So you may still find that you have, you know, maybe it's 20 people who engage with all your emails but haven't purchased yet. And so you can send them an email specifically for them. So it's not too early to do life cycle or engagement tiers. It's never really too early for that. So it's worth a shot. And if nothing else, even if you just set the segments up and you kind of see what percentage of people are falling into them, it will help. It'll give you an idea of how your marketing is kind of working overall, right? Like, hey, am I attracting all of these people who just get on my list but never buy from me? Something might be off in my messaging. Why aren't they buying? Brittany asked, when sending emails to this segment, should they come out of the weekly email updates? So usually, great question, Brittany. So usually how I do this is I create my email marketing calendar, which there's a podcast episode for that too. It's in the show notes of this one. I'll put all these links in here afterwards. I lay out my whole calendar, right? What are all my important dates, holidays, special events, things like that. And then once I kind of fill that out, when I have blank spaces and I need kind of a filler and I'm like, you know what? I only have like 1 or 2 emails that I'm sending this week and I typically send 3. I'll do it in that week. So they'll still get the other emails if I'm generally sending to everyone, but I'll just kind of fill in my little empty spaces with those. If you have a really, really full calendar or you have a big list or something like that, then yes, I would. Maybe you just say, hey, this week I'm going to email these 4 life cycle segments. And so I'm going to remove them from my regular send, but you don't necessarily have to. It just kind of depends on how much content you have to share. But I look for the lulls to do it. Especially if I'm like, gosh, maybe we just had a big sale or something like that. It's like they don't necessarily just like want more of that. Like it's time to be more personal because I've been just a little bit too salesy recently. So that's how I would do that. Does that help? I also feel like I was going to say something before I read Brittany's question, but I don't remember what it is at all. Oh yeah, I was talking about letting the segments kind of tell you how you're doing in your marketing and that kind of thing. So that can all be really, really helpful for you as well. And here's what I would say is my goal of telling you this is not to give you FOMO, make you feel like, oh my God, I have to go scramble and start doing this right now. You don't. I just want you to know that this is an easier way to segment and you'll get there when you get there. And that's that. End of story. Don't feel like, oh my God, if I don't do this, like my email is going to be total crap, because that's not true. It will still be profitable for you. You'll still see ROI because email is good like that. Amazing. So if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and pop in. Brittany, awesome. I'm glad that helped you. Elizabeth asks, I really did an email that was not sales related. It was all about equestrian travel destinations, and I sent it to different segments throughout the week. Oh, that's awesome. That brings up a really great point. So here's another little tip and something that I used to do. So, when you have a larger list, right? And when people ask me, oh, how often should I send emails? It depends on a couple of things. It depends on how big your list is and the size of your product assortment. The bigger those are, the more emails you can send. But something that I used to do, because, I noticed, hey, if I send an email, I get more sales, right? And with email open rates on average only being, 20 to 30%, there's still a lot of people who aren't actually seeing those emails. So that's where kind of resending emails comes in. But what I used to actually do is I would maybe have 3 general pieces of content, right, that I was going to send that week. And I would do just like Elizabeth did. I would, Monday and Tuesday, I would split my main list and I would send it to half of them on Monday and I would send it to half of them on Tuesday. So this way, every day someone is getting an email, but no one is getting an email every day. You follow? So that way I was always generating traffic to the website to create a more even revenue stream instead of having all of these like peaks and valleys. Because even though, when you do this, often you will end up with more revenue overall because everyone has different opening habits and all of that stuff, right? And it gives you more data to work with. Hey, which of these days, times, etc., did better? But even if it evened out in revenue, and I come from a corporate company, so like when you report directly to the VP of email, I'm VP of retail, and he's getting all of your emails, right? He's literally watching every last thing I do, not to be a micromanager, but just to keep his, finger on the pulse of what was happening. That's what I was being graded on. Like, hey, are people opening, clicking, and buying from these emails that I'm sending? And being the only employee at the time, I was responsible for the overall revenue and everything that was happening in the business. So when I did that, even like I said, even if it worked out to the same exact amount of revenue over the week, him seeing that more steady amount versus these like peaks and valleys made him feel more like confident in what was happening. So I know you guys are all, entrepreneurs, most of you, although I did have someone comment, they left a review on my podcast. This is so cool. And they messaged me on Instagram to say, listening to your podcast taught me so much that I got a really great job from what I learned on the podcast. I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. Next to, small businesses telling me they've increased their revenue because of something that they learned on the podcast, that's like second best. So anywho, point is you can create more predictability in your business. Like if you're cool with those peaks and valleys, like that's fine too. Ultimately, understanding how those sales are coming in, when you can start predicting that, makes your operations a lot easier too. So you can use email as a tool to learn more about your business. So I went on a total tangent there, but Elizabeth, thank you for sharing that. Awesome. All right, so we are at the 28-minute mark, and I like to keep these lives to about 30 minutes because I want you to be able to get back to your day. Though I so much appreciate that you spend your time with me. Again, if you have questions after this, whether you are with me live or watching the replay, feel free to drop them in the comments and I will come back and answer them. And then also check back for all of those links and everything that I mentioned that I will drop in here. So, Adriana, thank you for the tips. You are so welcome, my friends. So welcome. I will wait just an extra minute or so just to see, because I know sometimes there's a lag with the comments and stuff like that. So I don't want to skip out on you. But also, if you haven't already, if you are watching in the Facebook group, there's a poll in there. If you're on the page or on YouTube and you want to come over to the eCommerce Badassery group, please do. Just search eCommerce Badassery on Facebook. I have a poll in there because my holiday planning guide is being re-released very soon. I am working on some amazing updates, and I would love to know what other updates you would like to see. So there is a poll in the group. Please go answer it if you haven't already. I really appreciate you. And that will be out very, very soon. If you already have it, you will automatically get all these updates, and I will email you when they're in the portal for you. Facebook user, you're the best. I don't even know who you are, but you're the best. Thank you. Adriana, holiday guide. I voted for calendar. Yes. I know there are so many cheaters. You guys are all commenting. Can I have all of them? And secret. I probably will do all of them because that's kind of how I roll, but I might have to separate them and make one of them like a standalone add-on product. We'll kind of see, because if you guys have looked at any of my stuff, my free resource library, if you already had your hands on the holiday guide, if you've done a workshop with me, like, you know, this is not surface stuff. Like, who has bought a digital product, right, to find like that when you get in it, it's like a checklist that you could have like gotten for free on the internet, and it sucks, because that's happened to me many times. And that is not how I roll. So this is more than a guide. This shit is like a straight up mini course. And it's going to serve you for years and years to come in your business. So you know how I roll. Thank you, Adriana. Laura, thanks for the great tips. I look forward to the holiday guide as my, oh, it's your first holiday in business. That's so awesome. Adriana says, I love your PDFs. I have them on my Kindle and they are in depth. Yes, that's how this is really funny. I just remember having this conversation with my old boss. I just had a call with him today, so he's like so on my mind because he was literally the best boss ever. I think I'm actually going to do a podcast episode just about leadership and the experiences I've had working for different people, because he's legit the best boss I've ever had. And I cried after I quit because I didn't want to leave him. But I knew I wanted to serve you guys more. But anyway, so I remember having a conversation with someone over email about something, and there was just like, they just weren't getting it. And I was like, is it me? I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm good at explaining and teaching things. And he was like, you're definitely in depth and thorough. You don't think it's you. And I was like, sweet. So I just don't know how to do it any other way. All right, I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you everyone so much for hanging out with me. I will be live next week, 2 p.m. Pacific on Thursday, same time, same place. I'm going to put an event up soon, so you can get alerted to when this is all happening. And have a kick-ass day, and I will see you on the flip side, friends. Bye.